What is up, guys? Delboy here. A preview and a very unsure prediction for Daniel Jacobs versus Sergiy Derevyanchenko. This is a tremendous fight, I've got to be honest. It's a fight that I'm looking forward to no end. I love it. When this fight was first announced, I was buzzing, and as it gets closer, I'm really excited about it. The winner of this fight will become the new IBF middleweight champion. That belt was stripped from Gennady Golovkin. I like this fight. I'm a fan of both Danny Jacobs and Sergiy Derevyanchenko. Both guys are entertaining to me. Both guys can punch. Both guys have offensive qualities. Both guys have very good boxing skills. Both guys can do a few different things in the ring. I'm a fan of both guys, so I'm not really rooting for either guy here. I'm just hoping to see a good fight. And it's a fight, that's, to me, is a pick'em, I've got to be honest. Let's talk about the records and the attributes. Let's start with Danny Jacobs. He has a record of 34 wins, 2 defeats, 0 draws. 29 of those 34 wins coming by way of stoppage. Derevyanchenko has a record of 12 wins, 0 defeats, 0 draws. 10 of those 12 wins coming by way of knockout. So, in terms of pro experience, Danny Jacobs does have more, but I don't really think that will be too much of an issue in this fight for Derevyanchenko, mainly because, obviously, he had multiple amateur fights. He had a ton of amateur fights, and not only that, he fought in the World Series of Boxing, which is basically pro fighting. So, he's fought pretty much every style there is to fight. So I think the fact that Jacobs has more fights and has more experience in the pro ranks isn't really going to be a factor here. That's my opinion. In regards to the knockout ratios, Derevyanchenko's is slightly higher at 83% in comparison to Danny Jacobs' 81%. Again, don't think you can read too much into that. For my money, both guys hit hard. Both guys have some good knockouts on their resume. Danny Jacobs, I think he has genuine power. He's knocked out guys like Sergiy, Peter Quillin, Caleb Truax, people like that. He can hit hard at a good level, and so can Derevyanchenko. He's knocked out guys like Turiano Johnson and Sam Solomon, both guys who are pretty tough. I think both guys hit hard. If they connect on the right place, you might go to sleep. So neither guy can really get careless. Neither guy can get gung-ho. They need to be wary of each other's power. Danny Jacobs is actually listed as 5'11.5" with a 73-inch reach, whereas Derevyanchenko is listed as 5'9" with a 67.5-inch reach. So according to the BoxRec measurements, Danny Jacobs is 2.5 inches taller, and he has a massive 5.5-inch reach advantage. So Jacobs is the taller, longer guy. And in terms of styles of both guys going into this fight, I think maybe that plays into Danny Jacobs' favour. Danny Jacobs is he's not really one-dimensional. He can fight up close, he can trade and brawl, he can punch, etc. But I think he's best when he's boxing, when he's keeping it at range, behind a long jab, and he's looking for counter shots. I think that's when Danny Jacobs is at his best, when he's like operating in a boxer-puncher type role. Not a sole counter-puncher, but a guy who likes to keep you at the end of his shots and look for those big right hands and etc, etc. That's where Danny Jacobs is at his best, in my opinion. And Derevyanchenko is a guy, he's a shorter middleweight with short arms, so he likes to naturally get up close and he likes to work the body, and he can counter punch on the inside and things of that nature. He's a really good inside fighter and mid-range fighter is Derevyanchenko, so he's going to be wanting to close the distance and get past that Danny Jacobs jab. If he can do that, I think he can have success against Danny Jacobs. I think his inside game is a lot better than Danny Jacobs. Again, I'm not saying Jacobs can't fight on the inside, but I just think that Derevyanchenko does it a lot better. Look at some of the angles Derevyanchenko creates on the inside, where he's creating angles for himself to land punches, but his opponents can't really land much, even up close. That's a very good skill, his head control is really, really good on the inside. So, he needs to be taking that jab away from Danny Jacobs. he needs to take Danny Jacobs' reach away from him also. You know, he needs to work up close, he needs to work on the mid-range, because in fights with Sergiy, for example, when Danny Jacobs was boxing from range behind his jab, I felt he looked a lot better then. But when he was kind of trading, when he was up close, that's when he looked vulnerable. That's when he was getting sort of tagged up. So I don't think he can afford to do that against Derevyanchenko, because Derevyanchenko hits a lot harder than Sergiy. And I felt Sergiy gave Danny Jacobs a few worrying moments here and there. He didn't really hurt him per se, but I think Danny Jacobs was feeling it a couple of times in there up close. So, you know, you can't play that game with Derevyanchenko, in my opinion. So Danny needs to maintain range with obviously good quick feet, a nice powerful jab. You know, don't step out of a jab, step into it, put some mustard behind it, and really give Derevyanchenko something to think about coming forward. Give him something to really make him second guess himself and be scared to engage, be scared to cut the ring off. You know, look for that right hand counter, try and walk Derevyanchenko onto something big, especially early, because that might discourage him for the rest of the fight, and it could put him into like a shell, because Danny Jacobs does hit hard. So if he could walk Derevyanchenko onto big shots early on, that could be to a big benefit for him, to be quite honest. I really do feel this is a clash of styles in terms of what they're best at. Like I say, Danny's best at, in my opinion, keeping range and boxing behind his jab, whereas Derevyanchenko is good he's good on the inside and at mid-range. That's not to say, like I said, that's not to say Danny can't fight on the inside, and that's not to say Derevyanchenko can't box on the back foot, because he can. I've seen him do it, especially in the World Series of Boxing, but I'm talking about both guys' strengths, and I feel if both guys play to their strengths, that's how it's going to play out. Derevyanchenko is going to pressure him, and Danny Jacobs is going to try and outbox him and outslick him. If both guys fight to their abilities and both guys fight to their strengths, I think the fight is going to be exceptionally close. I think it's exceptionally hard to call. But I am slightly leaning to Danny Jacobs because, number one, the fight is in America. Danny Jacobs is the home fighter. And number two, it is a matchroom show. Well, it's partly a matchroom show. Danny Jacobs is a matchroom fighter. We all know if Danny Jacobs wins this fight, all the middleweight belts are on DAZN, and Eddie Hearn would have two of them at that point. So you best believe it that the home people want Danny Jacobs to win. So that has to be taken into account. And that alone makes me favour Danny Jacobs. I mean, I really do feel it's a 50-50 fight, but I think Danny Jacobs is going to edge it, probably win it on points. I don't think either guy is going to get knocked out. I think both guys are a bit too good for that at this stage. I'm leaning towards Danny Jacobs. I'm not confident whatsoever in that, but I'm just leaning towards him to get a points win here. Having said that, I do feel Danny Jacobs has a mistake in him, so who knows what could happen. But yeah, I am picking Danny Jacobs. I'm going to make my official pick, and it's Danny Jacobs on points. Really good fight. I love this one. I really, really do. I just hope there's no like BS in regards to the scoring. I hope I'm wrong. If it is like a close and Derevyanchenko should win, I hope he gets the decision. I hope there's no bullshit, because this fight is really, really good, in my opinion. How do you guys see this fight going? Peace.